Hello and welcome to the Iron Maiden. My name is Abby, and today I have the much asked for Nationals deck list for 2025. As far as I know, this will be the deck list I'm taking to my Nationals in Australia. If this changes, I will keep it updated, but this is what I'm working with right now. So I thought I would share it for people who have their Nationals sooner, since mine is still in a few weeks. So here's the equipment I'm running with. I have 3 head options, 2 chest options, 1 hand, 1 leg, so we're always running those of course, and 3 things to put in your hands. So Face Purgatory of course goes into most matchups as it is either just a 2 block, which is totally reasonable, or sometimes it's a 2 block that makes your opponent discard you draw, and it's very powerful like that. It's really good into some matchups and kind of just okay into others. Then we have Ebonfold, which is for Acilio and Kano. I don't think it's worth bringing into anything else personally. And we have Crown of Dichotomy, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But basically, it's my Verdant's tech. Is it good? It's okay, but I think it's much better than Faces in that matchup. Then we have Dyadic Carapace and Tunic. So of course, Dyadic Carapace comes into matchups where either the block or the arcane barrier is relevant, and Tunic comes into the matchups where instead of blocking, our opponent forces us to kill them, and sometimes that's hard, so Tunic helps. Quellhand and Creepers, always powerful and always there. Then we've got Flail and Book going together. These make a really good duo of Book doing just about nothing in most matchups, but it's really important in some, and Flail being generally important in every matchup. Then we have Reaping Blade. This is becoming more and more niche. It used to be that Reaping Blade would go into pretty much every fatigue matchup out of the concern of Count Your Blessings. Now I think it's really just a Verdant and Florian card, but I'll talk again more about that later. Which is apparently right now. Excellent fatigue slash hedge option into Reaping Blade, so you can consider running that into other decks than Verdant and Florian if you think that they are going to be heavy fatigue, or if you have scouted. So for example, if you know that there is a Jarl in your tournament who is playing sigils and other Earth Gain Life cards, maybe you bring it into them. But if you don't know, I think it's not that great. Then for Tunic, you're pretty much bringing it in whenever you're bringing in your anti-fatigue cards. So that is going to be your Revels and your Morvrian Skies a little bit is kind of becoming an anti-fatigue card, which sounds weird. But basically, whenever you're bringing in packages to get over the top, Tunic's going to help you with that. So here's the main board of 50 cards. Now keep in mind, I'll explain this a little bit more later, these 50 cards never change in any matchup. So we have 29 attacks in the deck. They are all Runegate attacks. There's no chain style attacks in this deck anymore. So we've got all 9 Deathly Whales, because I want consistency in this meta. There is so many decks that you can beat if you just Runegate every turn, like your Syndras and your other aggro decks. So that's very powerful. Then you've got Destruction. I got all 3 Banshees. These are really good against Gravy because they often try and push towards their Whaler Humperdinck. But also with the consistency this deck has, it's not that hard to get your Banshees out. Eulogy, Deathly Delight, Phantom Wraith, Widespread Ruins. There's nothing exciting here. Pretty much every Vynnset deck list plays all 3 of all of these. And then I've got 2 Widespread Annihilation. You know, I would like this to be 3, but the deck does not need that many attacks. And I've got Banshee in here because it's really good against your Gravy matchups. So I think you could cut Banshee and put in Annihilation number 3, or you could cut Deathly Whale and put Annihilation 3, but I've kept it like this. Then we've got my Binstant package. As I said in my 1 deck 3 types video, I like this Binstant style deck. It makes my blood deck go up to 35 because there's 6 of these. It gives you a roughly 3% chance to not have a blood deck card in your hand. And this is really important for me because every time I banish a card that doesn't have blood debt and doesn't come back from the banish zone, I feel like I just shot myself in the foot. So I really want that blood debt count to be really high, even if the attack count is not so high. It gives Shadow Puppetry a roughly 50% chance at hitting something off the top, which can be really good in some matchups sometimes. It smooths out hands, works with eloquence, blocks well, disrupts opponents in the case of Cull. Really flexible cards, and they add a lot of consistency to the deck. Then we have the Rune Generators. These are very, very standard. I'm up to 3 Malefic Red, 3 Malefic Incantation Yellow. I used to play 3 and 2, but now I'm on 3 and 3, as well as the 3 Deadwood Dirge. This helps smooth out your aggro games, and these cards also add a lot to anti-fatigue packages. From double and triple rune gating, they work well with your creepers as well. It's just really powerful. Your Quill Hand is either a get out of jail free card that helps you power out a turn against aggro, or it's a good way to get a massive turn working with a fatigue game plan. It's also really good in fatigue if you save it for when you draw Oblivion. Getting to 4 rune chants, not very hard in this deck right now, especially with Dirge and with Malefic Trigger before rune chant pop, but getting to 6 can be the tricky part. So I like to keep it for Oblivion. And the last cards in the main is the Go Again cards. The main board only has 6 of these, the 3 Shadows and the 3 Machinations. These are the most flexible and probably also the most powerful of the Go Again cards, which is why they're in the main board. So Puppetry is obviously powerful. It's always a +1. You can pay life. It gives an on-hit. Machinations, really, its power comes from being a block 3. Blue is also relevant, and Overpower is also relevant a little bit more and more these days, as people are kind of cutting defense reactions a little bit to beat these Verdants and Gravy style decks. So against an aggro deck, you would often use these either to block or to send Flail after a Deathly Wail. Against a fatigue deck, you need to arsenal them generally or set them up. And in mid-range, you just make judgments as you go about which of these kind of options you play with. So now we'll get into the sideboard, which is going to be a long part of this video. So as I said before, the main board 50 never comes out. None of the cards in that ever change. I only ever add 10 cards. I also never go over 60, and that's because I believe Vynnset's power comes in bursts. And if you add more cards, you are spreading out the bursts of power. Instead, we want to run exactly 60, get to the powerful cards quickly, because running out of cards is not the concern here. It's running out of good cards that's the concern here. Alright, so the defensive cards in the deck, I have 3 Haunting Rendition and 3 Reduced to Rune Chant. You can see this sort of Venn diagram of which matchups I think each is good in. So in the center, these are decks that you would play all 6, generally all 6 of these. So these are aggro decks, really. Some of them have a little twinge of fatigue, or they can block out okay, like Marlin's pretty good at blocking out. Puffin can be very good at blocking out as well. I could imagine a Mario, for example, wanting to block out, but in general, that's for matchups where your opponent will attack you and you will attack them, and whoever dies first, dies first. On the left side is Riptide, Ira, and Kano. These deck lists, I think Reduced to Rune Chant is not that good into. Riptide has the whole Dreadbore concern where they have anti-D-React. Ira, of course, is famous for her use of CNC, so you don't really want to be arsenaling very often. And for Kano, well, a defense reaction is worthless into Kano. And then on the right side, there's a bunch of decks that Reduce is good into, but I wouldn't bring Haunting. Azalea, you could definitely consider bringing Haunting if your Dash Inventor Extraordinaire opponent is guaranteed to be boost aggro. You can bring Haunting, but for a lot of these matchups, these are mid-rangey heroes who probably can't fatigue you, with the exception of course, Betsy Jarl, but they can block your good turns and attack on your setup turns. So having these reducers helps smooth out the setup turns with a bit of extra defense, as well as getting around some attack reactions, which a lot of these people have as well. Then we have Succumb to Temptation, all three of these. We have the Always pile and the Hedgeboard pile. So in the Always pile, you see a lot of decks that just can't or won't block. Some of these decks will block somewhat often, but you can always Arsenal Succumb, and it's very powerful in there as well. Sometimes you'll get these decks get a bit crafty and they might prevent the Arcane, but then you can Creepers in your Succumb, so consider that as well. On the Hedgeboard side, these are decks that might often block out, which makes Succumb not great, but we have not that many sideboard slots for these types of decks, not as many as I've had in the past. So Succumb will work in these matchups. Sometimes it only gives Go Again because they block the physical. Sometimes you have to Creepers it because they block the Arcane. And sometimes they block completely out and you have to Arsenal it. But all of these decks draw good hands and they want to convert them, and they'll take damage. So if you sit your Succumb in Arsenal, generally you will find a point where your opponent goes, you know, I've drawn my Blood Rush Bellows, I'm not going to be blocking, and then you can hit them with the Succumb. Alright, Chains of Mephetis. This card has seen a lot of chat in the Vynnset Discord, the Iron Maiden Discord. I believe it is very powerful and needs to be seeing more play in this meta. Below you can see all the heroes that I would bring my chains into. This is a lot more heroes. A lot of people consider, of course, the new High Seas heroes, but there's also all the brutes with their blood rushes and their draw discards. Kusai, especially now that she has more and more access to card draw. Kano, it's blue. You know, the Guardians, it helps set up, which is really good. And Azalea effectively turns Death Dealer off, and every time they banish an arrow, they can't play it from banish, so it's just gone. So into some of these decks that are a little slower, the best thing to do with chains is banish, play, pass. You get to keep your rune chant, and you get 2 turns of a little bit of extra safety, or at least you set up a little bit. You can also dirge the chains in these matchups, which can be relevant. Into some of these more aggressive matchups like Azalea or Levia, you do the same thing after blocking out with your hand. So it's really a block out, reset some tempo, get my feet back on the ground sort of thing. I think Chains is really powerful. I've only got space for 2. Honestly, I would play 3 if I could. Really like this card. Here's the anti-fatigue package. In this deck list, it's a little bit lackluster. So in the previous meta, we had things like Time Snap Potion and Tear Through the Portal. These cards I don't think are very relevant right now because lots of fatigue decks are being pushed out of the meta by Verdant and Gravy, especially Gravy. So you're really not going to see a lot of hardcore defensive Guardians, or even I think a lot of Dorinthias, for example. So I think it's okay to slim that fatigue package a little bit and try and shore up the other matchups that are more popular, like for example Gravy. If you do run into a fatigue deck, this package will help you win. It will be a bit of a struggle, but if you can set up a Nazareth or you can hit both of your Revels over the course of the game, you can definitely still win. So in general, the slow decks in this meta won't probably fatigue you. They probably will get into a point where they think they can kill you and they're going to trade value with you all game. So for example, this is what Verdant will often do right now. She will block with 2 cards, send 2 cards, and try and disrupt you along the way. Alright, let's get into some more specific text for some tricky matchups. So the gravy tech in this deck is Invert Existence, there's 2 of those, and Morvrian Sky's Red, there's 2 of those as well. This is because gravy is really, really powerful and popular right now, and without these sideboard cards, it's really difficult to win. I believe that these sideboard cards bring the matchup from pretty bad to at least 50%, I think, but I'm only really playing against Talishar gravies and local gravies, so I am assuming that the Nationals competitors will be a bit more powerful than this, but I still think these cards make the matchup significantly better. My general philosophy to beat this matchup, you can kind of tell by the sideboard cards, is to run them out of allies. By killing allies, getting your Morvrian Skies hits, kill a second ally, and by invert existencing the allies out of their graveyard, you can either completely fatigue the gravy by running them out of attacks almost, or you can kill them because their rune chants will go over at them the whole game. So if they want to block constantly, they won't be able to set up their allies as effectively, and you should be able to fatigue them. If instead they are taking the damage to set up more powerful board states, you can hopefully clear those and the rune chants eat away at them. And then Verdant. This is the worst matchup the deck has. It's definitely the worst matchup that anyone plays right now. You could argue that Hyper Fatigue Guardian is going to be worse, but no one's playing it. Reaping Blade is pretty good, and it stops the combo aspect of the deck. And it does also help against fatigue, since you have a weapon that converts spare resources. You also get Crown of Dichotomy, which adds an AB, which is really important because when you lose Book because you bring in Reaping Blade, you go to either 1 AB if you bring Vexing, or 3 AB if you bring Dyadic Carapace and Vexing. These are okay numbers, but I'd like to be able to go up to AB4. That way, when you break Vexing Quillhand, you still have AB3, which is the important number generally. It also has that other line of text which lets you put a Runeblade attack and non-attack on top of your deck. It doesn't have Go Again, but it does allow you to effectively guarantee next turn that you have an attack and a non-attack. Get very powerful ones like Revel and Deathly Wail, for example, or Deathly Wail and Shadow Puppetry. Good combinations there. This is a pretty rare thing. I haven't done this very often, but I think it has value. And it's definitely better than Face Purgatory, which doesn't do a great deal in the matchup. That's the deck list for now. I'll show you before we finish out my deck list on Fabrary. This will, of course, be up on in the description I'm in. So we've got the main board sort of equipment, the main board 50, as you can see. The sideboard cards, as I told them. And then a bunch of maybe cards. So, for example, you might think that it's not worth taking for Kano, and you would want to just dodge Kano. So you take out Ebonfold. There's a couple good cards in here you could play. You could start putting Mordred's or Revel number 3 in, if you're worried about fatigue. Maybe you think that Reaping Blade doesn't really help the Verdant's matchup. I'm not sure. This is honestly something worth testing a lot more. Maybe you take that out and you add in some Sonatas or a third Chains perhaps. But there's a lot of options here for flex slots. Really, I think these 2 crowns are flex slots. You wouldn't cut both of them, but you could cut one of them. Reaping Blade is a bit of a flex slot, although I think it is good for the Verdant's matchup. Chains is kind of a flex slot, but I think it's worth running. Everything else I think is too core to certain sideboard plans that you realistically can't cut it. But if you have any questions about the deck, about what you'd like to cut and change, of course, join the Discord in the link below. Ask away. There's also the comment section, of course. I'd love to hear any of your questions and let me know if you like the deck or what you would do differently. Where are we here? All right. Have a good day, friends, and be good.